Welcome, everyone. I'm Fred Kemp. I'm President and CEO of the Atlantic Council. We've had heads of state here. We've had globally powerful chief executives. We've had all manner of celebrity. We've rarely had such enthusiasm about a speaker at the Atlantic Council or such demand for seats. If this were a commercial event, they'd be scalping the tickets out on the front. We are gathered here today for a very special event, a conversation with a remarkable world leader and a true humanitarian hero, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. He has changed the lives of countless people across the globe, helped build bridges in some of the most conflict-ravaged regions of our planet. Sri Sri, we are incredibly honored to host you here at the Council this evening for a dialogue on combating religious extremism and terrorism. Thank you so much for taking the time. You've done so much good in the world, it's difficult to even begin to summarize it. In 1981, you established the Art of Living Foundation, the largest volunteer-based NGO in the world today. It says a lot. Present in 155 countries, the Art of Living brings people of diverse social, economic, geographic, cultural, and religious backgrounds together in the spirit of service, wisdom, and celebration to create lasting solutions to conflicts and issues faced by individuals, communities, and nations. You also pioneered the International Association for Human Values in Geneva in 1997. The IAHV and the Art of Living Foundation worked together on humanitarian initiatives related to conflict resolutions, poverty alleviation, disaster and trauma relief, environmental conservation, and economic development. In India, you have worked with the Art of Living to end the degrading and ancient status of untouchables and establish educational initiatives to promote sustainable methods of farming. You've established 453 free schools in rural India, benefiting 58,904 children annually, 48% of which are young girls. In the United States, you have pioneered programs for prisoner rehabilitation and treatment for veterans suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And you have built interfaith dialogue programs in partnership with the Simon Wiesenthal Center in Los Angeles, Yale University, and the Martin Luther King Jr. International Chapel. In Colombia, you played a central role in 2015 to broker peace between the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia and the Colombian government, putting an end to a bloody 52-year conflict. Your personal intervention, which we've just watched on some film, some of the people that were involved in this, helped change the course of history. In Kashmir, you helped arrange a rare dialogue in 2006 among leaders of several armed groups and helped to steer thousands of youth away from the path of violence. You have engaged stakeholders in the peace process in areas such as Sri Lanka, Iraq, the Balkans, Israel, Lebanon, Kashmir, and the Ivory Coast. And this just scrapes the surface of the good that you have brought to individuals and communities across the globe. It is our enormous pleasure to host you at the Atlantic Council and to host someone for the first time, an individual that is so committed to making the threads that bind human communities stronger than those that continue to divide us. And we were just having an interesting conversation about what are the trend lines and what should concern us. So we're very eager to listen to you. We're fortunate to have this opportunity to listen and to hear from you, to hear you articulate your vision and a roadmap for inclusive, effective solutions to the global threat of religious extremism. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mukesh Aghi, the President and Chief Executive Officer of the U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum, our valued partner and friend, who will provide an introduction to tonight's discussion. Mukesh, many thanks for partnering with us on this very important event.
Thank you, Fred. Welcome, Sri Sri. First time I met him was in 1994. I was on a flight from Bangalore to Singapore, and I couldn't understand so many passengers wearing white heading towards Singapore. And I was inquisitive, and I had the fortune of sitting next to you in the flight, and I had 4 hours of discussion on spirituality, meditation, and yoga. So it's good to see you. You look the same what you looked almost 30 years ago. I think Atlantic Council, which was set up almost 50 plus years ago, has always looked at issues from what I call as hard power, presidents and prime ministers who come in. And I think for the first time, we're seeing a spiritual power coming in and trying to bring peace to the environment. So it's good to have you and welcome. I wouldn't take much of the time, but I just want to introduce Bharath. He and we discussed about it, and you have to understand it was challenging to bring this issue on the table in Washington, D.C., because when you're dealing with politics, when you're dealing with policy, you don't deal with the cultural, spiritual aspect of the issue also. So, Bharath, I have to give you credit, and Fred also agreeing to the whole prospect of bringing Sri Sri to this environment. So, Bharath, over to you. But before, let me just introduce Bharath. He is the director of South Asian program. We work very closely with him, especially on India. By education, he is a nuclear scientist, and he has worked at ISRO, he has worked at EDS, he has worked at and Graduate Trinity in Dublin. And I think Bharath is is a great partner, doing a tremendous job. So Bharath, over to you and welcome.
Thank you, Fred, and thank you, Mukesh, for that generous introduction. As they always say, if my wife would have heard it, she would have believed it, and if my mother would have heard it, and she would have doubted me. So, but I'm very delighted, and as Fred echoed, I want to echo Fred's voice about we've hosted so many different kinds of people, but this is one of a kind event for the South Asia Center, and we are truly honored to have you and delighted to welcome you to this. And I want to start off this by more of an evening conversation, and where I think I was reading through some of your materials, and you had said it pays to listen. Everybody likes to talk, but it pays to listen. So I'm going to take a back step here and be in a listening mode and kick off with one question that I want to ask you. Is you've intervened in many different conflicts around the world, starting from Punjab to the Colombian peace process. And we'd like to hear from you some of your own experiences in this. What are some of the commonalities? What are some of the differences? Obviously, each conflict is different. Each objectives of those conflicts are different. And each methodologies that you adopt in these conflicts are different. So if you could unpack this for us, that would be a great starting point.
First of all, thank you, Fred, for having me here, and Bharath, and all of you being here this evening. Well, I can share a part of my experience in this whole process. You know what my observation is, whenever there is a conflict, the first thing is there is a communication breakdown. Second, there is a trust deficiency. These are the two main things, trust deficiency and communication breakdown. And if we can bridge these somehow, then communication, the process begins. By some providence, we could do this both. So when we speak to people, we make them understand that we understand them. First, we have to give them the idea we understand them. Taking the example of FARC, the FARC were resistant to meet with me. In the beginning, they said, no, we believe in Marxist Leninist philosophy, principle. We are not interested in talking to anyone who is in the religious or spiritual field. But then they sent some feelers to my public talk in the university there in Havana. And then I conducted a short meditation. Then they came and it looks like they enjoyed that meditation. Then they came to see me in the hotel, 15 of them. They agreed to meet with me. Anyway, I gave them the time gap also. I'm here for 3 days, and if you change your mind, please let me know. So they changed their mind and they came to me. They came sad. I told them, I understand you're also victims. And I understand this, that you are also victim of injustice, and you are fighting for social justice. I agree with that. But I told them I don't agree with your methodology, the way you are going about with it. So you need to, if you can adopt non-violence as a means to achieve your social justice, we are with you, the world is with you. Otherwise the world looks at you as terrorists, as militants. That broke the ice. They heard me, they sat with me, they said, you are the first person who understood that we are victims. Everyone is pointing finger to us as though we are the only culprits in this, 53 years of war, guerrilla war. So when I said, why don't you adopt Gandhian principle of non-violence, they said, first, it will be hypocritical for us to do that. We lost so many people. I said, I understand, but do you want to continue to lose more people? Why don't you give a try for this? On that note, and of course the meditation did make a difference. I strongly believe a little breathing exercise, meditation calms them down and they are able to think in a different mode altogether. Then they agreed to ceasefire, unilateral ceasefire, which happened in 2015. Then the dialogue began from there, the peace dialogue, peace process. I think you need to make them feel that they are part of the dialogue, and we cannot accuse someone and ask them to come for a dialogue. We should give them the confidence we understand their point of view, their predicament. I often say inside every culprit there is a victim crying for help. And if we can heal the victim, the culprit will disappear.
That's I wanted to go down that road further, but our time is limited. So I want to also stretch into a different direction. I believe yesterday you spoke at Yale University, and the title of the talk was Mindful Leadership in Turbulent Times. A couple of blocks away, some of our friends could use that advice and messages. So for the sake of the audience, could you unpack the title, what went inside that title, and what is the message? All in 5 seconds.
When we blame the time, we say that time is turbulent. It's not the time. Time is always challenging, but the turbulence is always within us. So we need to change our perception and our observation and our expression. We need to take a look at our own emotions. How are we able to take the challenges that comes right in front of us and with a calm, cool mind. This is where I would say looking a little bit inside of your own emotions, your own reactive tendency will make a big difference.
That was a 5-second answer. Thank you. So I know a lot of you are curious, so I do want to turn to the audience. And please raise your finger, identify yourself, and keep your questions brief with courtesy to the other participants out here.
Thank you very much, Swamiji. Raghuveer Goyal, I'm a journalist in Washington. My question is very simple. What message do you have for Prime Minister Modi in India fighting against terrorism and President Trump here in the US? Both countries are victims of terrorism. Thank you. Namaskar.
See, terrorism is a global issue, and I don't need to advise them on this issue. They all know the situation very well. But let me go to the root cause of terrorism. Root cause of terrorism is, number one, wrong indoctrination. These people think that their brand of God is only the true God. Everyone else is doing something that is false. And so when they don't acknowledge the real God, the others are just culprits. They are, they should not, they don't have the right to exist. This is their concept. Either you accept my God or you have no right to accept, because my God created this whole world. So this wrong indoctrination needs to be set right. For that, a multicultural, multi-religious education, I feel, plays a big role in the world. When every kid grows up with a broad mindset, knowing that there is only one God, but worshipped in many ways, adored in many ways, in many cultures, many civilizations, many scriptures and books, that accommodating and accepting the diversity will come in their genes. This needs to be done. So multicultural, multi-religious education must be introduced at the school level and college levels. And exposure to others. See, the other is always a threat. So other cultures and other religious dialogues should be part of one's life. Then the threat or fear will disappear.
Hello, I'm Sharon Bovat, Voice of a Moderate. I'd like to know hope for the American people. With all the decisiveness and extremism played a role in our election on both sides. And what would you say to the average American today to give them hope so they can go forward in their country, and to give them hope that we can also make the world a little bit more peaceful?
I would say that America has a very vibrant democracy. It has a great justice system. The values and constitution guarantee everyone their right. So don't lose hope, and you can always progress, and you are progressing. Keep that faith and hope and move forward. There is no need to be desperate in this country, because the system is such, though turbulent times do come, but finally, the truth will triumph.
Namaste, Guruji. I'm Sri Lekha, and I'm representing American Hindu Coalition here. I have two kids. One is a teenager, another one is a 10-year-old. So what message should we continue to talk to them when we are talking about all this religious extremism that is going on in the universe? Thank you.
As I said, encouraging kids to multicultural, multi-religious programs. encourage their participation, number one. And not generalize and eternalize the problems or the challenges. Yes, a particular gentleman from a particular community is creating havoc, but do not see that everyone in the same basket, everyone to be of the same type. This is repeating the prototype is a common tendency in young people. Educating them to be cautious about that tendency, that would be good. And I would say for kids, we need to teach them lessons in nonviolence, the importance of nonviolence. Unfortunately today, pride got itself latched on to violence, aggression. If someone is very aggressive, and that happens to be the thing to do. So we need to wean them away from being aggressive to be more compassionate. And value of compassion, value of communication, value of cooperation should be more emphasized than aggression. I think that would be essential in our society, here as well as in India.
The gentleman there.
Thank you. Namaskar, Guruji. Pankaj Shah from Dallas, Texas. Personally, in personal life and in professional life, we always face a situation where internally I'm able to resolve something with my own karma or deeds, but there are externalities which is very difficult to resolve. How do we balance between that and yet be very successful?
Challenges is from outside, but in strength is always from inside.
The gentleman there.
It is absolutely true that we have to emphasize education, but the education of the children is controlled by adults. If the adults have been indoctrinated when they were younger, why would they change? So how will this cycle break, which is what this world is on the path of right now?
We still have hope that not all the educators are on the extreme side. We have very sane and well-meaning educators still on planet. I think their voices need to be heard more. If you see in the world, the people who create havoc or who lead those sort of things are very few, but their voice is very loud. The voice of peace and cooperation seem to be in the back seat. That they have to come to the forefront.
Wait for the mic.
Gurudev K.V. Kumar. Sometimes even the well-learned ones make prejudgment on certain things without having an overall view of what's going on, either in Washington or in New Delhi. And when we make that kind of judgment, we tend to make mistakes. I think, how do you think that we can make the right judgment?
I heard that there is a hall of silence in the Congress here, in the Capitol Hill. I think people should use that more. And in India, we need to create one in the Parliament, a hall of silence. See, when someone gets, gets a few moments of reflection, gets time to meditate, relax, that whole thought process changes. Yeah? Because our perception changes.
Thank you, Gurudev.
So, there is a question there, but
Take her, Deep. Deepa Menon, attorney. Perhaps one of the most defining qualities of your initiatives is that it's grassroots level. And at the grassroots level, religion provides a social structure. There is a group that you belong to. And when you feel that, oh, my group isn't quite going in the right way, or the thoughts that are coming up that needs to be non-violent, or how do you marry this need to belong to this group with the need to initiate change at the grassroots level?
This is a challenge. Because of the security of the group, people would tend to not raise their voice and remain in their comfort zone. But when there are bigger crises in society, I have seen people coming out and speaking up against any sort of injustice, even if it's happening in their own social group or religious group. This is happening. It just needs courageous leaders in all these spheres to make that impact.
I'm going to go back to a couple of points that you mentioned. One inside when we were chatting in our private conversation, and you said the current trends are more worrying for you than they have been in the past. If that is so, could you unpack this for us a little more? What do you mean? What are the factors? What is worrying you? And where do you think we are heading?
See, today, though conflict happens in one place or an event happens in one place, the range of its spread becomes global. Before, it could be contained in one place, but now, because of information or disinformation or misinformation, wrong information, you have to put tremendous effort to contain the disturbances that happens due to a single event somewhere, you know. Not only this, it also creates a lot of fear in the human psyche. You know, if something could be happening there, it can happen here, and so that sense of fear and insecurity is on rise. I think here we need to bring back the faith in humanism, that there are good people everywhere, and it's not all bad everywhere, it's not only bad news, but there are good news. You see, good news is no news at all, it only is
or
the
no
hard
news is good news.
Yeah. So constantly being bombarded by the negative information, the human psyche is shaken in some way. Here we need to reinstill confidence in human values and humanness that still exists in society. There's a lot of compassion, a lot of good people, but this confidence, reassurance has to be brought back. Social media is very good because through social media, media is not controlled now. News is available to everybody and everyone can create the news, make the news. At the same time, it has its downsides also. So we need to be cautious about that.
Yeah. When you talked about humanism, I'm particularly reminded about M.F. Hussein's paintings, and where he walks you through all the religions and picks the most prominent excerpts from that. And then finally, the last slide of his painting is the humanism painting, which he says the commonality between all these religions is humanism. So I'm glad that you brought it out. And by the way, it's a very expensive set of paintings if one ever wants to get that. But
humanism should not remain only in the paintings. It has to be in classrooms. It has to be in classrooms, it has to be in workplaces, it has to be in politics as well.
And speaking of classrooms and bringing that to ground, one thing particularly struck me in your experience was the PTSD for U.S. veterans, and also your experience in reforming hardened terrorists and militia. Could you talk to us about some of your experiences in that, and what drove you towards this path? And what are some of the lessons that you picked?
See, with PTSD, many of our teachers are teaching. We have taught nearly 3,000, close to 3,000 veterans here in this place, and excuse me. And they had tried all type of medication and counseling. When nothing had worked, finally they came to try our breathing exercises and techniques that we have been teaching, and it was a very successful program, and it rolled down to many other areas as well. So in Europe also, people in Israel and other places also, people are now trying. Yeah, after. Also, we have been working with the school district in Chicago, in New York, New Jersey, and other places here in USA, where children with a lot of aggression or anger, they could make use of these techniques, this breathing exercise. See, what we have forgot to teach our kids is that our emotions can be controlled, managed by our own breath. For every emotion, there is a particular pattern in the breath. We often tell our kids, hey, don't get angry, don't get upset, but we don't teach them how not to. We have not given them those tools. So here, we have developed many such tools, many such programs for them to empower themselves. So they feel much more stronger from within. They're able to control their emotions. So recently, this technique has been adopted in de-radicalization program of European Union as well. This last week, they have, because of all the, the psychologists and the psychiatrists, they did the experiment, and they have done the thesis, and they've given the report, and how these techniques are very useful in de-radicalization. So they have been recommended now by the European Union as well. So what I'm saying is we need to empower our youngsters that they need not be victim of their own stress or disturbed emotions.
Guruji, what is the role that the Indian diaspora in America can play in the times when there is a lot of violence here in the US? And what can American leaders learn from India's culture?
See, if you want to learn, there is a lot to learn on both sides. India can learn a lot from America, America can learn a lot from India. Basically, we should rise above our nationality and see ourselves as human beings. And wherever another human being is in trouble, we should simply jump there and do what we can to protect ourselves. I think this time, in this digital age, when your internet and your phones don't have any boundaries, we should also remove the boundaries from our minds. And we should feel we are all global citizens, sort of global, we belong to the world.
Yeah, Gurudev. Arvind Agrawal from Maryland. Guruji, is there any similarity or differences between the problems created by the religion and the caste system that we have in India? Both of them at times prevent people from reaching the higher human values. Thank you.
Caste system has been a big issue as far as India is concerned. unfortunately, it is also getting politicized a lot. There is a lot to be done in this field. Those cities and big towns and cities have almost gotten over it. Still, it exists in village levels, in rural areas, which had to be attended to. We have opened schools, free schools, 453 free schools, and today, as of now, about 60,000 kids are being educated. So schools are places, and also spiritual gatherings. Nobody asks what's your religion in spiritual gatherings. When big spiritual gatherings happen, people of all castes, they come. And it's a melting pot. For example, Kumbh Mela, 3 crore people, 30 million people go there, and you will see that nobody asks you which caste you are from. So, as it is, the religious, spiritual leaders don't distinguish. They don't look into caste system. Well, when it comes to marriages, caste system plays a very, is playing a crucial role. But I think it's a long drawn issue. It will take some time, but touch wood, I feel it's going in the right direction. People are being more aware, especially the young people are not into that caste system unless they are being given some soaps and asked to stay as a separate group. That's a political issue. Now, coming to religious fanaticism, yeah, there are fringe elements in all sides, in all religions. We should just ignore them or corner them. The voice of peace and sanity must be heard loud and clear. This we need to do.
Hello, hi. My name is Chantel Bingham. I am a 2015 Dalai Lama Fellow, but I also do a lot of work in the city of Charlottesville around food insecurity and hunger. And one of the things that I feel like has been left out of the conversation is we're talking a lot about ideology, but we're forgetting that a lot of people are suffering from real things such as hunger or lack of access to housing. In Charlottesville, 1 in 6 people are food insecure and suffering from hunger. And a lot of my work has been after the alt-right rallies in August, trying to sort out not only race relations, but how people get radicalized. And one of the people that actually organized the rally lived in public housing. So my question for you is, I know that a lot of our motivations may be rooted in spiritual and ideology, but there's a lot of suffering in the world. There's a lot of poverty. And how do we reconcile that people are not only making decisions based off some idea, but they may actually need those resources to live a sustainable life? What do we do when that is the case? How do we compromise?
Your question is, how will spirituality matter here when it comes to poverty, hunger, isn't it?
Sorry, in this context also, I'd like you to elaborate on your 2001 rural development program and combating child malnutrition.
Correct. Spirituality brings self-confidence in the poor people. It's not only for the rich. I'm sorry to say that. A poor man needs self-confidence and spirituality. What we have seen in the rural areas in India, in Africa, we have worked there, and this gives them enormous self-confidence and motivate them to be self-reliant, number one. And among the rich people or middle-class people, spirituality gives them a bigger heart to do service to society. Charity cannot happen from an empty bowl. So there is somebody need to fill those charitable bowls. And that can happen only with people with, by people and with people with big hearts. And a spiritual mindset where they feel compassion and they feel caring, sense of caring and sharing with the rest of humanity. So in this sense, I think spirituality plays a very important role. So for child malnutrition, our organization has worked, and we have been working for this, community kitchen camps, and in many areas, So you need someone to motivate people to come together. And we also had a program in India where every woman, before she cooks her pot of rice, she keeps aside a handful of rice, raw rice in a pot, and several households, they join together and donate it to the most needy and poor people. So nobody goes hungry. So this type of motivation to do something good comes from spiritual, I think, force.
I think there was a question there.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, I'll come back. I'll come to you.
Jai Gurudev. I'm Yogita Gandhi, and I'm also from Maryland. So we talked a little bit about, the teenagers and growing up and the education system. We usually see sometimes a lot of radicalization happens I've seen it happen at two different levels. One is at the teenage level, and sometimes you even see it more in the adults. Just wanted to hear your perspective as to what are the means or ways we can do to help curb it at each one of those levels.
As I said, radicalization's the central issue is only I go to heaven, everyone else going to hell. They create hell for everyone else. That mindset has to be changed both theologically and through an experiential awareness of humanness, through compassion, through dialogue, and making them aware of the diverse spiritual plethora of knowledge that is available.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jessica Tunin. I founded a company called Netwalking, and I also do work during the day in finance and accounting. And I'm finding that it's very difficult to be more mindful during the day and do breathing exercises. I was wondering if you can share a 1 minute way to help throughout the day. A 1 minute exercise.
You want me to share some exercise for 1 minute?
Yeah, I find that it's very difficult to do that a day, but if it's just a minute, then it's not too difficult.
Okay, in just a moment, what can you do? Just hold your breath. 5 seconds. And as kids you used to play this freeze, statue freeze. Why don't we do that? For a moment, just freeze. The other day one executive of a company came and told me that, Gurudev, you saved my job. I said, how? He said, I wrote a very nasty letter to my boss and mentioned all the wrong thing he did. It was very nasty. And then you had told me, just freeze before you sign the letter for 15 seconds. And then I read back that letter and I could not sign my own letter. So I tore it down. So taking that, all these negative emotions bothering the spur of a moment, it just throws you off the balance. So if we keep those 10 seconds gap in between, hold the breath or keep breathing, it would help. However busy you are, you can't stop breathing, I tell you. But if you can for 5 seconds in between, it can create a lot of mindfulness at that very moment. But meditation, I would say, is essential. Like you take shower every day. Like dental hygiene, I would call it mental hygiene. Every morning, few minutes of meditation will keep us sane and will keep our keep us going with a lot of energy.
And so one final question before I close it. Consistently coming back to the topic of the conversation, which is combating religious extremism and terror. Something that we've read in our own literature is challenging the narrative. That is, whatever narrative is there, this is fueling extremism. Can you come up with an alternate narrative? That is how we've looked at this problem, or one of the ways that we've looked at this problem. Is this something that you've considered, or is this part of your methodology as well? And if it is, what are some of the lessons that we could learn?
You see, we seem to live in our isolated communities. If you see, either it's religious or nationality or language communities, they seem to remain in their isolation. First, we need to come out of our isolation. Number one. Second is, when they see the religious leaders of different religion on one platform speaking in one voice, the followers don't take the route of extremism. When the leaders teach them, look, the other guy is evil, that gets ingrained in the mind of these guys who take to religious extremism. So, interfaith dialogue, and it's not just enough having it here. I mean, in Washington, D.C., having an interfaith dialogue doesn't mean anything. It has to be held there where it is needed. It has to be held in Erbil, maybe in Iraq. It has to happen in Jordan. It has to happen in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. All these regions where you find the diversity there, but in isolations. There they should come together and send a message. That is one way of combating religious extremism. The second thing is, people should learn something about their religion. See, we accept food from every part of the world. We accept music from every part of the world. But when it comes to wisdom, we seem to shy away. I have the same question. See, by eating Danish cookies, you will not become Danish. Or by eating Chinese food, your nose will not go flat. So, when you accept food from every part of the world, when you can accept music from every part of the world, see, listening to Michael Jackson's or Madonna, you won't become American. I mean, right? You still be whatever you are. But you listen to music from everywhere. Or you listen to sitar, you don't become Indian. You don't have to be an Indian to listen to sitar music. So, I would say that we need to break this barrier about religious exclusivism and create a sense of education and communication on that level, that every individual should know a little bit about all other religion and they feel respect for those religions. And so this is another important goal that our education system has to achieve and the social structure has to achieve. Third thing I would say, participate in each other's cultural and religious programs. In India, when Holi happens, everybody gather, everybody greet everyone else. Diwali happens, Eid happens. So there is a sense of participation in others' program also creates an inclusiveness.
I was going to end, but I'm reminded about something here, and I just wanted to push you a little on this. One thing is to get a peace deal. The next thing is to sustain that peace deal. And I want to go back to Colombia here. And I think, Colombia is going to face elections very soon. And there are voices that you hear about, that these deal or the terms of these deals might be renegotiated or the goalposts be stretched. And there is a school of thought that it is more important now to ever push the implementation of that peace deal in Colombia. So how do you look at sustaining the peace deal and making sure that the durability and the fidelity of the deal is not compromised when you undergo an election season like this, and when it can be politicized?
I can speak from the religious point of view and spiritual point of view. Peace is fragile, whether it's individual or it's in society, unless it is coupled with true humanism or true spirituality. It's only through a deep personal development that you can sustain the peace, whether within you or in the society. Peace deals can happen, but to keep those promises, there must be a political will. And when it comes to keeping the promises, there would be very many challenges, like what's happening now today in Colombia, and different voices for their own political reasons can disrupt peace. But these people have to decide. We cannot say anything about it.
On that note, I want to request the audience to join me in giving you a round of applause. I also have a housekeeping announcement. I'd kindly request you all to be seated until he leaves the floor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Should I remove this?